morning, everybody. Okay, so this meeting is an open meeting, just for everyone's information. So I will begin and open this meeting. This is in follow-up to our last conversation on last Tuesday at our general council. I know there are some areas of concern, which I'm sure councilors will address. But what I'll do, good morning, Kathleen. Again, thank you for joining us. So really, this is a follow-up to, again, our last discussion regarding the reopening of our schools and looking to further this discussion and hopefully next steps and what that looks like. And so again, thank you, Candice and our communications team. Again, this is a live council that is being streamed via our Facebook page.
I didn't say it was.
And so this will
I said
also
they're having a
be
meeting
within our
tomorrow,
local
a special
media
meeting.
as well. Just if I can ask in terms of, so we receive as minimal feedback, if you are not speaking, to put your mics on mute, just so that again, we do not hear any feedback from anyone on the other end. We will open up for questions and comments after Kathleen's presentation, and then we will go from there. So that being said, good morning again, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and I will pass the floor over to Kathleen.
Good morning, everybody. I know we have some educators joining in, and just to provide more information, answer any questions you might have. But I wonder if I can just share my screen and first of all, share the information that we've gathered from our between last meeting and this one. So I just will do that if that will work. Okay, so going back to our parents for their input regarding plans to reopen the schools. The survey that went out began with this preamble. The schools continue to prepare for reopening following the strictest public health guidelines for student safety. Schools will use a part-time hybrid learning model. And the reason for that is that it is safer. This plan includes cohort grouping to make sure class sizes are small and children from the same household attend on the same days. The schools will not reopen January 4th due to caution around potential holiday COVID transmission. And then the invitation, please provide your input regarding a reopening by completing this short survey. So this survey was very short, 2 questions. The first question was, given the current plans to reopen schools using a cohort model, small class sizes, cohorts organized by household, inclusion of daily outdoor learning, would you support a February 1st opening date for schools? And 345 families responded on the electronic survey, and with 52% of respondents saying yes, and 48% saying no. So very close numbers. Then the second question on the survey, if the schools open February 1st, would you be sending your child or children to in-school classes? Again, yes, 50%, no, 50%. Split right down the middle. The schools also did phone surveys, and so that they could try to reach all people, which they made every attempt to do, asking the same questions. Some schools just asked the second question, but the results are quite similar in that to question 1 about reopening in February 1st, 56.5% yes, 43.5% no, and the next question, whether you would send your child to school, 52.5% said yes, 47.5% said no. So 345 families responded to the electronic survey. 353 families were reached by the phone surveys. And I just want to kind of take you back. The fall survey that we did, at that time, 444 families responded, and it was just slightly over 50% of families stated they would send their children to school in January. So there's been very little change really in this survey to last. It's 50-50 really. Excuse me. Now, those that are interested in overall stats, we have through our nominal rolls, we have 614 families. Our responses to surveys, the fall survey, 69% of families responded. This latest survey electronically, 56.1% responded. By the phone survey, it looks like 55% responded. And when we look at surveys, we can see that, when you do a full-on survey, if you get over 30%, you start getting into that, it's being significant. We're over that 50% mark. So it's unlikely, even if we reached everybody, that things would change very much. It's very much 50-50. Since December the 8th, when we're here last, in order to start, the COVID custodians need to be in place. With Public Works believing that a January 18th start for the custodians is appropriate and that they can deliver on that. The PPE, we need 3 months supply of PPE on site. It is ordered and expected to be on the way, but it needs to be on site. And nurses in the buildings, working on training staff, training students, and supporting parents. And we'll need, through doing a poll like we've just done, we still will need to go back to parents and make sure that we know each individual parent's wishes. And then we allocate staff based on those parental choices. And also the support of the go-ahead from the emergency control group. Council's decision on December 1st at the advice of the emergency control group was that schools and daycares and so on could open. And that is still in place. That would need to be in place February 1st in order to open as well. If there was a big spike in numbers or something in the community, no matter how prepared we are and all of these other things in place, that will ultimately determine, the yes or no on that particular date, and when or how the opening happens. Okay. I just I know that council has a copy or was sent a copy of this information, and I wonder if there are questions from council. If I can stop sharing my screen, and then I can see you.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen, for providing those results. I'm now going to look to any questions or comments from council. It's going to be it looks to be another tough decision as the numbers are quite close. I see Councillor Helen.
So my understanding is if 50% want their children to attend school and 50% don't, the 50% can still do the homeschooling?
Absolutely. So even when the remote, sorry, Helen?
I think that's really important for the parents to know that if they don't want to send their kids to school, they don't have to. People seem to think because we're doing it that they have to do this. So that's really important to let parents know that they don't have to do it. It's a choice, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Helen. I see Councillor Wendy.
Thanks, Chief. So thank you for the presentation, Kathleen, and cute hat, Robin. Just a couple of things. For me, I don't think it's so much about saying yes or no to the date of opening, because I think setting a date and then planning towards it is something that has to naturally occur. And I certainly think that parents need to have the choice to send their kids to school or not. And I understand that's what it is. I do have concern. I mean, we did receive a copy of the report just a few minutes ago. And I know there's so much work that has gone into that, you know, by administration, by everyone. So my questions, I really see this as a bit of a two-tier decision. One is the safety measures associated with COVID and ensuring all of those safety measures are in place. And I know you talked about the plexiglass, you talked about having a number of things in place. My question around, are there specific protocols to all of those things as well? So for example, you know, somebody comes in, they do the screening, everybody's temperature tested, all of those pieces, but a student starts sneezing. What's the protocol? Does everybody have those same protocols so everybody is from the same page, and having that guidebook in place? But then the other tier of this is the student needs. And that I'm not quite as clear on, or I'm not quite as confident from what I've heard from your presentation so far. For example, you know, and I raised them the other night, but I've had a lot of people contacting me since your presentation last week. You know, one in particular, a caregiver with a child that has very specific needs, and not being assured that they will have the support, the one-on-one support that they had prior to COVID. No confirmation could be made. And, you know, being talked around the issue, TAs may not be available because somebody has to monitor bathrooms. You know, there's other services that have to be done instead of that one-on-one support or other support with the students. I understand that class sizes are smaller. I heard that very clearly, but smaller class sizes does not necessarily mean that it's easier in the classroom with teachers. If you have 10 children that are coming in a cohort, and 6 of them have very definite needs, or 5 of them have fell so far behind, then you need those supports in the classroom. Otherwise, we're setting up students to be unsuccessful. And I don't think, I know you're all dedicated to learning, so I know no one wants that. So I'm not as confident that those things are in place. I didn't hear that. Did you do any engagement with teachers, with staff? I think we had talked about that last time as well. Are there concerns being raised? Any parental concerns that are coming forward? Are they being addressed? But at the end of the day, how are you planning on meeting the needs of the learners that may arise? Have you done a scan of what are those potential problems? How are you going to address them? Because I'm not hearing that those additional resources are going to be in the classrooms to help with this. You're bringing in nurses to help with screening. If you don't have the dedicated TAs, if you have them doing other things, then who is in the classroom to support the learners and the teachers as well? So that's huge for me in terms of moving forward. And for me, I don't have a problem with saying yes to the date of reopening, but I think it's a work in progress of ensuring that these things are covered off. And if we need additional resources, we have to put them in. And that's not taking from existing budgets that we have. There's been a lot of funding that's come down through ISC for this very thing. So we have to ensure it's in place, because I think there are going to be issues. And I'm sure you all know that as well. So what's that side of the plan going forward as well? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Wendy, for your comments. I just want to maybe shift over to Kathleen to try to look to a response in addressing those.
Sure. Excuse me. I think, first of all, council needs to have the reopening plan. So the reopening plan has been continuously upgraded throughout the fall on a weekly basis with all health and safety precautions. So that plan, the final version of it, because health just finished another portion, will be distributed today, this week. And it's not, I think those details in writing are something that you need to have in your, to take a look at. So that's definitely part of the process here. So that's one thing that you mentioned, Wendy. So that's first off. Staff feelings. We did do a staff survey. Staff is really all over the map. Some are feeling very confident. Some are feeling very anxious. And those anxieties, a lot of those anxieties around how things will actually look with students in the building are things that it's through, putting all these plans into action. It's a very tough time for teachers, having done now months of online remote learning with students. I don't think there's a teacher that doesn't feel that that students are better served face to face. However, they are, there's a number of anxieties for the teachers, and the longer that the students are out, those anxieties just get built up more and more. It's like the anticipation of something, and having all your ducks in a row and you're ready, and then that doesn't happen. And then, as time passes, those anxieties get more and more. And of course, if we don't have a date, then, we can't, it doesn't make sense to bring in, extra custodial staff, extra nurses without any opening date. So those are tough times. And I think that this fall, has been a very challenging time for teachers. And their thinking really ranges across the board in terms of the anticipated opening. And the more, the rate from feeling very prepared all the way through to feeling anxious. And what does that mean? Is that, and we'll be dealing with anxiety and, throughout this period. It's a tough time. And every teacher is doing many, many things for the first time that they never thought they would have to do, like teach online to children. One of the greatest sources of anxieties is not being able to reach so many children. There's some children that, have never returned a printed package. There are families that we can't track or keep in touch with. That's very anxiety producing, regardless of the best efforts of every one of the educators involved. So this has been tough times, there's no question. So in terms of that, in the last that you talked about was really the whole area of special education and special education resources. And the special education leads at every school have been working, intensely with creating a special education environment for highest needs children in a remote setting. that work continues, whether remote or face-to-face. In terms of individual needs of children, first of all, it's knowing, okay, which students would be coming back into the building, what are their individual needs, and how do we meet those needs? And that's something that, it is, of course, it's a case-by-case basis. We anticipate, like right now, it's all on anticipation, right? So if you have a student that requires a one-on-one that has, normally would have a one-on-one person with them who has needs that can only be delivered that way, that's one thing that we look at. If someone, a child has, say, some behavioral issues when they're in a class of 22, they may well not have those issues at all in a class of 8. In fact, that's something that we need to look at and then allocate staff accordingly. So it's a very different environment that kids would be going into compared with the regular school environment of large classes. And that does make a difference.
So a follow-up question, if I can.
Sure.
So
Sure. Go ahead, Wendy.
So there's a disconnect for me, Kathleen, in what you're saying. So in talking about, and these are unprecedented times, absolutely, there's no question about that. And that's the reason we're all here, right? And what you talked about in terms of staff and the anxiety, some are, fully on board and prepared and agree, feeling great about it. Others are not, they're anxious. So that speaks to mental health. And we know what the statistics are everywhere with what COVID has done to mental health. And teachers are no different. Teachers are human beings as well. As much as they, they're super people and everything that they juggle, and, we entrust them with our children and grandchildren, but they're human as well. So, if you have teachers that are feeling that, you have students coming in, students are anxious, parents are anxious, what situation is that creating? And when you talk about, if a student comes in a classroom of 6, well, it may be a different scenario. Maybe if we're really, really, really lucky, but chances are that won't come true. And I think erring on the side of having those supports in place, if somebody is calling me and they're concerned and they're worried, they want to send their child to school, but they don't feel confident after talking to a principal because there's no guarantee of a TA, there's no guarantee of a support, there's no one-on-one. And they made the comment to me that, I'm not sending my child to school as a babysitting service. I want them to learn, and I need to know that something's in place for them to learn. And I'm not hearing that from you. I understand the concerns and weighing out the situations, but part of the planning is having those things in place and having them at the ready to go and anticipating that I think teachers are going to be bombarded with a whole host of issues. And it has nothing to do with their capability or how much they're trying or how hard they're working, because I think everybody is doing an extraordinary job, but these are unprecedented times. So being aware of that, coming in and making sure the supports are there. You know what, if you need extra bodies to do bathroom monitoring, then get that in place. Save your TAs to have the one-on-one, or if you need other needs, and not just highest needs, but it's anybody who has those needs, any type of accommodation, to ensure they have that in place, because that's what parents need to hear, that those things are in place. If they send their children to school, they are going to get that, rather than the unknowns. Thank you.
So I think, around around special ed services, that's very particular to, a specific student's needs. That's not, certainly doesn't change because of our situation. if there's the special education needs that are required, they continue. One-on-one is not, sorry.
Parents
Yeah,
aren't hearing.
one-on-
though.
Okay, well, one-on-ones are, you know, that's a term that, you know, gets thrown around a lot. There's a lot of reasons why a child would need an actual one-on-one constantly all day. And a child that would require that extreme amount of intervention is something that, you know, that is commensurate with their needs. You know, a child that would normally be diapered at school, a child that requires help with feeding, a child that requires help with mobility, that has a one-on-one worker with them all the time in order for their safety, their wellness, in order to participate in school. That is a child that would require a one-on-one regardless of how many people were in the room or not. Their needs would dictate that. And so allocation of staff is dictated by need of that of student need. And you know, those are things that I think each school deals with, you know, on a continuous basis. When we would know who was coming and what that would look like, then we can definitely address those needs. But you know, a child, it really varies. It really varies in terms of those needs. And principals of special education are not to enable and empower children, not to put them at a situation where, you know, they're reliant on an individual one only when they don't necessarily need that in the environment. So the environment does need to be taken into consideration for children. So you know, I think that special education conversation is very particular. And that, you know, that definitely is something to, you know, at a school level.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. I'm going to look to any further questions or comments from council at this time.
It's Sherry Lynn.
Sure, go ahead, Sherry Lynn.
I guess with what Wendy's saying, I guess the bottom line is, are you going to commit to additional resources to this for the schools? It's just a yes or no question.
Yep. Yes. And that is definitely already committed to.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Did you have any further questions, Sherry Lynn?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sherry Lynn. Looking to then any further questions or comments? Looking to Councillor Audrey.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, educators, Kathleen, everyone. It's a really good conversation to hear. And I know that you put a lot of work and effort and energy into this and continue to plan. And I appreciate all that you're doing for our children and our community. And I know that it's going to be ongoing conversations with all of our parents. And in order to set up a program for the students, in order for you to do your staff allocation. And I do believe that the people who want their children to attend school potentially the 1st of February, if everything is approved and all the safety and PPP and everything is in order and the okay from public health, as well as the emergency control group, then I think that the parents have a right to have their students in school. And you still have time to make sure that any other details are taken care of, as well as parents have the ability and the right to call the parents, or sorry, the teachers, administrators yourself, if they are unsure. So I'd like to make sure that that opportunity is for everyone too. And again, you're doing a good job and I appreciate all that you do. And June, I do like your antlers, they're lovely.
Okay, thank you, Audrey, for your comments. I'm going to look and shift over to Councillor Helen.
Yeah, I have a confidence in our principals and our vice principals that they're going to absolutely ensure the safety of our children. I want to say, first of all. Secondly, my question is, if the teachers are in the classroom, how are they going to work with the students that choose to do the at-home schooling? Because I know right now the teachers are working with the students, right? How are they going to do that if they're in the classroom? And my
So,
second question is,
sorry.
what's the process if a student, like Wendy said, what's the process if a student starts to sneeze or says he's not feeling well? What is the process going to be for that student? Like, how is that going to work? Those are my questions.
All right. In terms of so when a parent makes the choice of their child attending, those children are part of two groups, cohort A and B. Okay, so they're divided up into two groups. And if they decide not to not send their child to be remote learning, we'll call that cohort C. Okay. And teachers will be divided up as well. So some teachers will be teaching cohort C. They'll be teaching online completely. And some teachers will be teaching the cohort A and B students. So the cohort A comes to school Monday, Tuesday, and alternating Wednesdays. Cohort B comes to school alternating Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So the teachers that are with cohort A and B, they teach their group in the classroom. And when when that group is going home, they have tasks assigned that they can do from home on the days that they're not at school. And they can also be part of Zoom lessons into the classroom. The ones that choose to be online or choose to be remote will be with other teachers. So the teachers are reallocated. Because we're looking at, from every indication we've got, that about half the parents want to send their children. So we look at, basically the schools would have about a quarter of their normal numbers of students in school, in the school building at a time. So basically half the teachers will be teaching online and about half the teachers will be teaching in that face-to-face model. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Looking to any further.
My other question of what happens.
Oh, sorry, yes. So if students are screened as they come in, okay? If a student over the course of the day starts to sneeze or starts to show symptoms, that's when they would be, each school has a wellness room set up where the nurse would be. They would be accompanied to that wellness room by the nurse, and parent called for them to be picked up right away. Number one thing, this is for the parents who decide to send their child to school. This is a partnership. It really is. So if in the morning, the child, each morning at home, the parent would go through the screening questions with their child and not send their child if they have sniffles or they are sneezing or they are having a fever, not to send their child to school. And I know that's a complete about face to what we've always heard and always done as educators. We've always said, send your child, never miss a day. We've given prizes for attendance and so on, but we're in very different times. So in this situation, if a child has any symptoms whatsoever, we wouldn't want them sent to school that day. We want them to call in. They would call in to the nurse and let them know what the symptoms are so that they can be tracked, or nurse calling back with them. And a child that does show any symptoms at all would be sent home, and they have a follow-up with health about that. Okay, so that is all part of the opening plan. That's part of the screening process. That's not educators that look after that. That's health personnel that look after that and make that decision. And as well, any parent that does choose to send their child to school, they have a wellness agreement documenting sort of what they need to do and what all parents need to do in order to keep the school environment as safe as it possibly can be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
It's
Thank
Robin.
you.
Could I?
Thank
could
you,
I have-
Kathleen. Oh, sorry, my apologies. I just want to Robin, just before I do have a couple counselors' hands up first, and then I'll shift over to you. I just want to I see Counselor Wendy has her hand up, and I believe that's all I see at this point, and then I'll shift over to
Chief.
Robin.
Chief, I have a question.
Oh, sorry. Okay, that was the second one. Thank you, Carrie. So just for in terms of next speakers, our speakers list, I'll go to Counselor Wendy, and then to Counselor Carrie, and then to Robin.
Yeah, thanks for the discussion, and thanks, Chief. So what's the plan? Because I had talked about, staff and teachers, and that's a bit of a flag for me when you talked about sort of the split in staff. So what's the plan to work with staff and engage them to ensure that everybody has the confidence with the plan and the opening, and some of those anxieties are lifted, because those are real, right? So there has to be that engagement, I would think, and listening to what's going on. I mean, because you don't want to end up getting into a situation where everybody's anxieties are running high and then an incident occurs. So what's happening with that moving forward? Because if not, it's going to spill over into parents and students, right? So, and I think as a council, we have to do some other discussion too, and some other planning, because we did see when schools reopened around us, the influx of COVID cases. And even when we had students going out to high school, we saw a bit of an influx here in the community. So just, the perfect laid plans, as you're talking about, Kathleen, but if symptoms occur during the day, they're not pre-coming to school, they start end of day at school, and, that will be some things to put some protocols in place. So I know you're working with public health on that, but, we don't know everything that's going to occur. So always having that what if plan in place.
So in terms of engagement and staff and what's happening, I'm just going to ask any of the principals to comment on that in terms of what you're doing. Robin?
It's Robin. I think I can answer a lot of things, because what I'm hearing from a number of people is you're wanting to know, what is our reopening plan? How have we educated our teachers, and then how have we educated our parents? So I'm going to kind of touch on all three, but if I could share my screen for a minute, just to share with you a few of the documents that we have been working on probably since about last April as a staff, as a principals group, with coordination with Kathleen. I just want to share with you because it can answer a lot of those questions. So if I could have somebody share their screen with me, that would be great.
Okay, I think you should be able to share your screen, Robin. Do you want to try, or if we can give Robin approval to share her screen?
Can you see my screen?
No, we can't.
No, we can't.
Okay.
Just looking to our comms team, Tammy or Candace, if you're on the line.
Yep, she should be able to share her screen.
Okay.
Oh, just had her there.
Can you see my screen now?
No.
No, we can't. But we did. It was up for a second there.
Okay. Can you see it now?
No.
No, we can't. Are you able maybe even just to walk us through it without share screen, Robin?
So we do have a district document, and it is very lengthy, and a lot of the questions that you are asking are in this document. So if somebody could remind me, I think it's really important.
I think I can pull it up, Robin.
Okay, so Kathleen's going to
Okay.
pull it. So while she's pulling it up, mine's
Okay.
not.
Is
Mine's
that what
not.
you wanted to see?
Yeah, it was
Or to
the
share?
district
Okay.
document.
Mm-hmm.
So here's an example of a document that we have at MLEC General shared with all of our parents. And it lists in detail all of the things that you're mentioning. It talks about, maybe you could make it a little bit larger, Kathleen. It lists in detail all of the things that students would do, how they would be getting off the buses, how they would be entering the classrooms, sanitizing their hands. So there are a number of things in here. Maybe we'll just go to an example and we'll watch one of the busing ones on the second page, Kathleen.
Second
So
page. Okay.
the second page, and we'll just open one of the videos. So here's an example. And you could click on the bus drop off, and it's just a video. Oh,
Okay, just a second. Maybe it's not going to go for me. Oh. Okay. It's not going to go for me.
Okay, so I'll just explain it a little bit because it's
Right.
probably not in the correct format for your screen. But in this document are all of the videos that we have shared and created, and every school has done this and shared with their parents all the videos about entering the school, how they will be getting on the bus, how they will be washing their hands, wearing their masks. It shows what the classrooms look like, what the plexiglass barriers will look like inside the classroom. So that's a document that we've all shared with our parents. So that's one of the things. I know you said, what are the protocols, what's in place? That's something we have shared with all of our parents so they know. In addition to that, maybe Kathleen, you could share up the reentry plan, the one that we work on Fridays with PAC. So the reentry plan is another very large document that we have worked on with the principals every Friday for, I'm thinking since school started, we have been working on this document. All of the protocols are in there and have been shared with teachers as far as cohorts, class sizes, protocols, what happens when a child gets sick, how will the nurses be utilized, how will they be eating lunch, how will they be entering the bus, what happens if there's one case in the school, what happens if there's two or more, which is considered an outbreak. Wendy, I'll answer your question in a minute if I just have a chance to share. This document was shared with all parents in August. So prior to school starting, it was shared with parents in August. And right now it's been revised, and we have all of our teachers working on a transition team where they have been given the document, and any questions they have about student return, we have a transition lead group. They ask all their questions, and those are taken to PAC. They're answered. We bring our staff together. We go over their questions, and we share that information back with them. So a lot of work has been put into that process where we're all working together and putting protocols and plans in place. So I'm thinking that maybe as counselors, you haven't seen that document, which is about 121 pages. Is that correct, Kathleen? Or is it 141 now?
Well,
It has.
it's lengthy, but yeah, but it's coming out, but also a summary of it so that it's accessible as well, because it is very detailed and someone will, you know.
So that document has
Whichever.
been shared with parents back in August. We have our control group that has been meeting every week, and we've been revising the document to be reflective of the policies in the surrounding boards are all in there. We have wellness agreements in there that parents will sign. So it is a very lengthy and very comprehensive document. And I understand the counselors probably don't have that right now. But as far as any parents who may be watching right now, you were all emailed that document back in August. It talks about how the classes will be cohorted. It talks about how students will go outside for recess. It talks about masking requirements, that they will be required to wear masks all day in the classroom and may only remove those masks when they're eating their lunches. So there are a lot of protocols that have been formulated with lots of work from our education staff, but it has been placed out in the community. And I think that that is really comprehensive if you all have a chance to look at it. Sorry about that. You had a question, Wendy? I don't know. Councillor Mark, where are we going to go next?
Chief?
Oh, sorry, just really quickly, if I can, I want to shift over, and I know Councillor Carey had also had a question. So just before that, I want to give opportunity for all councillors to ask or make any comments or questions. So Councillor Carey, you have the floor.
Yeah, Kathleen, once the parents have made their decision for their children, is there a plan in place if they decide to change their mind?
Yeah, if they change their mind, that's fine. If they're in cohort A and B, they'll stay with that teacher, but be remote. And cohort C, like if they decide to go online for a while, and then we look at a period like after March break to make a change. Say somebody says, well, I want to go remote and see what it looks like. And then they decide they want their child to join in. We look at it again at March break in order to make that decision for the rest of the year. What we really can't do is have them doing a lot of like back and forth by week or something. They can decide to not send their child, but they would stay with the same teacher. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Carey and Kathleen. I just want to go to any further questions or comments from any councillors that may have not had the opportunity to ask any questions or comments.
It's Melba. Mark.
Mark, I have a question.
Okay, I'm going to go to councillors Melba and then Hazel, and then I'll move to councillors Audrey and Wendy. So Councillor Melba, you have the floor.
Yes, I certainly agree with all the questions that have been asked for the needs of the children. But one of the things that hasn't been answered, which Sherry Lynn asked, is what is this extra staff that is needed to make sure that the needs of the principals, teachers, and specifically the teachers and parents are met? Like, for example, it hasn't been mentioned. We know there's going to be a lot of absenteeism on the part of the children and specifically on the part of teachers. How are we going to get replacements for those teachers? And how is that going to work? I haven't heard about that at all. And I'm very concerned. It's been mentioned, TAs, nurses. I think last meeting it was mentioned counselors in place. It hasn't been, I don't think it's mentioned mental health workers in the school setting, outdoor monitors, those kind of things, but specifically replacement of teachers, because we're going to have that. You have it all across the board where there's great absenteeism. How are we going to plan that properly, that they meet the needs of the children and each other in the school system?
Melba, at this point, and that's a very, very good question, because we want to, we have to have backups, right? So we've already hired 8 floaters. We're in the process of hiring 4 more. We call them floaters, but what they are is basically built-in supply teachers in the schools. And if it's a go-ahead to do students in person, we're hiring 8 more teachers on top of that. So additional 20 teachers are brought in. The mental health workers, social workers that are in the school will continue to do their work. They will be in the school as well. So each school has a social worker. Each school has a ECD, FASD worker and assigned. And then all of the programs from health, mental health programs and so on will continue. Many of them will be online or outside. So looking at what that can be in order to make sure that people have services, but that we don't have, a number of additional contacts coming into the classrooms. So that's something to manage along with this. Does that answer your question, Melba?
Yes, partly, but I wanted to follow it up to say that you have a lot of information here, a lot that you've shared, but I think with children, as we know, are in transition many times. They're with grandparents, they're with uncles or aunts, they're switched back and forth for various reasons. Now, we had a meeting, and most of the children, for example, in care of our child welfare system is a result of drugs. So that, as we all know, is what's happening in this community. So what I'm saying is all the people who care for these children, and we keep saying parents, 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 as we know, it's not always parents. It's transition, back with grandma, grandpa, in Brantford with relatives, coming back. So we have all those things happening, and I don't think all of the people who are going to be caretakers in the community have all this information that they should have. And I think it should go into the papers myself, so everyone will have it. Neighbors, a lot of times neighbors are in charge of children, for example, coming home. Relatives, can you watch out because I have a medical appointment and I'll be taken all day. Can you be the person that if something happens at school to take care of my child? All those kind of things happen with people. So I think it needs to be across the board, not just parents, but caretakers and neighbors and whoever would fill in emergency situations. Thank you.
So the reopening plan should be published in the local papers as well as online.
Yes,
is that
with all
yes.
the details of how you're going to take care of our children in the school system. Robin did a very good job, and so have you, and Wendy did a very good job in answering questions. Everyone has. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melba. I'm going to shift now over to Councillor Hazel.
Yes, thanks, Mark. It is a lot of information that's being presented and a lot of work to ensure that the safety of the children happens. I guess for myself, in looking at the children and the teachers who will be with the children who intend to go back into the schools, through all of the health and safety, all of the cleaning, etc. I'm not sure that any of us can always guarantee a full 100% safety, no matter what you do. Like Melba said, children are in transition a lot back and forth between two households between their parents. I think all of those considerations need to be taken. I guess for myself, even myself, I'm unsure if it's even a good idea to go back to school yet, because there's just 5 more months left in the school year. That vaccine is now being shipped here and there. I don't know what the plan is yet fully for Six Nations, but I'm thinking, will 5 months of doing what we're doing now be beneficial with the vaccines that are coming out, and then people will be hopefully getting them. I know a lot of people don't like the idea, but there is no way either council, Kathleen, or all the teachers can guarantee the health and the safety of everyone. We can't promise that. If the kids go back into the school and somebody becomes ill and then it's transmitted, there's going to be a lot of blame offered, but that's par for the course, because that's what happens. But in my mind, I guess I'm sorry for the teachers. I'm sorry for Kathleen, because this is really heavy duty. You got almost like the lives of everybody on your shoulders. And it looks like you have done so much work, and you have to be commended for that. But the bottom line in my mind is, maybe I'm taking the easy way out, I don't know. But I'm thinking there's only 5 more months in this school year left after February, when the intended date is. And during that time, wouldn't that be the transition process of the vaccinations and how they're administered? And that will eventually be a guarantee that there's more safety than not. I listened to that Anthony Fauci, who's on TV, and he says even with the vaccines, you still have to be careful for a period of time until the people all become, I don't know what the vaccine does to the person inside, like where it guarantees, that you're safe from getting the disease. So I guess that's my opinion. I think we should maybe wait 5 more months, get the vaccines just to ensure, because for sure, none of us wants anyone to become sick with this. So that's just my say. Thank you.
Chief, it's Sherilyn.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Hazel. I'm going to shift now to Councillor Audrey, and then Councillor Wendy, and then Councillor Sherry Lynn.
And me.
Hello again. I would like to also ask Kathleen if you would please give that copy of all that information on links to all of council, as well as all of our council staff, so that we all receive it, and we can maybe help with the parents' questions a bit better, as well as the going back to school. If we decide to have that opening date as February 1st, then it's optional. Parents who want their children in school should have a right to have their children in school. Parents who don't want to have their children in school and think it's too big a risk, they have that option too, and they have that right. So those are my comments. I'll leave them there right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. I'll now shift to Councillor Wendy, and then Councillor Sherry Lynn and Councillor Michelle.
Thank you. I'd like to put a motion on the floor, and that is to motion to set the reopening date as February 1st, with the agreement that staff, teachers, and parental engagement continue in order to reach a comfort level for all, and that A, another survey is done on January 22nd with parents and teachers, and B, a presentation be brought back to council on January 27th as that final marker before the start date.
Thank you, Councillor Wendy. There's a motion on the floor. It's moved by Councillor Wendy. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Second by Councillor Audrey. Questions, comments? I'm going to shift back over to the speakers list. Councillor Sherry Lynn and then Councillor Michelle.
I just have a question in regards to if a child shows symptoms and has to be tested, the other children plus the teacher would have to be tested or self-monitored. Is there a way to get the test results back quicker that you've been working on? Because then you have no teacher, no class. What's the plan then?
So Sherry Lynn, in terms of testing and so on, that's a public health question. I don't believe anyone from public health is on the line today, but I'm not sure. Not in the things that I can see. Okay.
So I guess my question to you then is if the child has the symptoms and then tells you you send them home and they said, oh, I'm getting tested, does that say that the other kids have to self-isolate or self-monitor or to get tested? Also the teacher?
That depends on public health. Okay, so a child that has symptoms may not have COVID, they may have a cold. But the precaution is they would go home regardless, okay? And then follow up with public health. So public health would make that determination about who would be tested, how is it self-isolated, all of that. That's not the educator's decision. That's a public health decision.
Okay, so if it will say
okay,
if it happens, what's the plan?
that sort of outbreak plan or procedure is documented in the reopening plan. So for instance, if the child just has a cold or has seasonal allergies or something like that, does not have COVID, then that wouldn't, none of that would be necessary. But that would be a call from public health to inform, what that looks like. The precautions that are in place in terms of masks, plexiglass, the staff will have masks, they'll have shields. That makes the contact much lower risk contact. So it's not that they're having, they talk about close contact. Close contact is together within a distance without the masks on and so on. Those precautions make a difference, quite a big difference actually in terms of risk. And it would be health personnel that determine what that risk is. So parents that are sending their children back to school, and as we go back to school, or we're going to have times when it's remote again, it's back to school again. It will always be based on health precautions. Even if the decision is February 1st, if there's higher numbers, and the emergency control group says it's not safe at this time, then it's not. Those health precautions every step of the way, they dictate what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Kathleen and Sherry Lynn. I'm now going to shift over to Councillor Michelle.
Thanks, Chief. And so thank you everybody who presented this morning. I wanted to comment. I think what I heard in this last hour is communication, the lack of. And as council, we've heard it from community. Communication is imperative. I have a daughter at school. I have a son in high school. The communication I received from the high school is great. I get it all the time. And I think we need to work on that because what you're hearing is the unknowns. No one knows. So we're asking these questions. So I think we really need to engage parents, engage teachers. Everybody has a vested interest of our kids in our community. 2 questions. I know there is a lot of apprehension because of the unknowns. So I've also been approached like others. What do we do with individuals who are coming from the red zones, those restricted zones? Is that part of the plan? And also my next question is, and I asked this at our school, actually in the September home and school meeting of, it feels like we're behind. Yet we knew the pandemic happened in March. We got the, here's what's going to happen in August. Well, how come we weren't communicated before the end of the school year? So moving forward, we know some students haven't engaged with any of the learning modes this year. So what's the plan for next September? Hopeful we're not going through the pandemic next September, but even that, we need to be planning because we know what's coming up in the future. So I guess I'm also, I hear what we're doing right now, but we also have to look at the future too. And I haven't heard any of that discussion. So I just wanted, if Kathleen could answer the question about the red zones, the restricted zones.
The restricted zones, the emergency control group has information.
So do we have
regarding
educators
that.
coming in from restricted zones to teach children? Will they be coming in?
The people that work in the schools, we don't have people that work in the schools from the restricted zones, what being Toronto.
Well, yeah, there's,
Sorry,
I only
Michelle.
morning.
Yeah.
I think five cities that are in the red zone or the black zone, I guess. And what are they coming in to teach children when the school's open?
So when the advice that I've been given from the emergency control group is that people working in the schools with all the safety precautions, they have to screen to come in. They have to wear masks, and when students are there, they'll have to wear masks with shields around students. It's what that individual, the precautions they practice is what matters. It's not where someone lives. So that's how it was explained to me. And again, that's more of a health question. But the procedures that they follow is what matters. So if they have any of the symptoms of COVID, they're not permitted in the building. They stay and work from home or self-isolate, regardless of where they live.
Thank you, Michelle and Kathleen. I just want to shift back now to Kathleen. I believe you had any questions to the motion.
I did. January 22nd is it, like, at this point, that's too late. We would need to start calling parents one by one and getting their wishes the first week in January. Then from those wishes, that's when we would make sure all the staff allocations are done. So January 22nd would be too late. We can't do another sort of Survey Monkey wide survey. Now it's individual discussions with parents or families or caregivers, and also getting out to them a wellness agreement so that they have full understanding of what their responsibilities, roles are in making that decision, and getting those wellness agreements back, because there needs to be a signed agreement for each and every child and family that participates. From there, all their busing arrangements need to be made. So that will take from the very start of January. If the decision, is the February 1st as the date, then from the start of January, that's what the schools will be working on. We can certainly come back to council and share the information that we have, as well as go into much more detail about the reopening plan, and I think, and publish that, of course, very, very broadly. And certainly if we weren't opening for students, as the plan gets continuously upgraded, until we had a yes, we're going to be open for students on such and such a time, we want to publish that plan so it's completely updated for the families. So sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but so January 22nd would be much too late. Okay. And if we can come back to council, anytime to update, to provide information, to around our planning and what's happening. More than happy to do that.
Yeah, I'm then looking to the mover and seconder in regards to Kathleen's comments. Looking to
My motion
Councillor
stands.
Wendy.
Thanks, Mark. My motion stands. January 22nd, you just did a survey in 4 days and you got everything back and it was fine. This is to gauge that hopefully there's been progress with the information and the communication. That's what that's about. And to come back to council on that date is just to give us the findings, because it sounds like with the questions being asked and the question, there's a lot of work to do yet. So that gives you time to do that. If we set it for the beginning of January, unless everybody's committing to working over the holidays, I don't see how that communication will change. That's why the motion was said the way it is. It stands. If it's defeated, then somebody else can make a motion, but I have to leave the meeting shortly. So if we're not going to a vote, and then I can withdraw
it. Sorry, that just to I'm sorry. Just the
Sorry, go ahead, Kathleen.
Sorry, I just want to explain how the next group of information would be derived. It would be, it's not just a short blitz. It would be needing to work with every parent. Would we have that information by January 22nd? Yes, we should. Now, January 18th to 22nd that week, the schools are closed for midwinter. So our staff would not be available, but that's how the information would need to be collected, and we would start right away as soon as the Christmas break is done.
Okay, thank you. There is a motion. Okay, just really quickly, there is a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded with those dates included. I do want to go to Councillor Sherry Lynn and then Councillor Audrey.
I guess all I want to say is if I'm making this decision for the kids to go back to school, we as a council should be going back to face-to-face meetings then. That's my comment.
Yeah, so that's also just to comment on that piece. That's part of the plan, is that we would be back in council the same time, face to face. Councillor Audrey.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the survey on the 22nd is not to make a decision. The survey is just to basically be updated on the information from the parents. Is that my understanding, Wendy?
That's what it was. It was to gauge where we're at. So this is developing. This is work in progress. That's what I keep hearing in the presentation. So by that date, we should have information. I mean, right now we're hearing that staff have concerns, there's anxieties, all of that. If this engagement is ongoing, if there's that communication that everybody's talking about, people are feeling more comfortable about it, we should see that in survey results. If it goes backwards, then that will tell us something. So it gives some time in between to develop. That's my thought.
Okay.
But as I said, I'm happy to withdraw it.
No, that's fine. I can live with that because it's not a decision-making when it's an update on the information that the administrators and Kathleen will be bringing back to council. Thank you.
Well, if it's glaring information, if it changes, then it would lead to a decision, I would think. But the intent isn't to.
We'll deal with it then when we get that information back, right?
Yes.
Exactly. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Again, there's a motion on the floor. It's moved by Councillor Wendy, seconded by Councillor Audrey. Are there any further questions or comments before we go to a vote? Councillor Helen?
Yeah, I think I'd like to hear from a couple of the principals and see what they think about the resolution. Kathleen has expressed concern with it, so I would want to hear from some of them to see what they think about it. I mean, this is who it's going to affect. Right? It's going to affect the principals and the school and everything.
Mark, can I make a comment? It's,
Sure, go ahead. Sure, go ahead, Mrs. Bobber.
I hear all of the concerns and the questions and the you know I think for all of us there's anxiety because whatever decision we make, you know, there's risks involved. We understand that. For sure, we all know that whatever decision we make, we're going to, you know, 50% of our school population is not going to be happy. So no matter what decision we make, we're not going to have happy campers 100%. And I don't think we expect that, but I think at our last meeting, I indicated that I was confident that we have worked long and hard to put safety measures in place. We have provided training for our staff. We've included our staff in all of the, all along, we've included their input. We've responded to their questions. Maybe not so much the way they want to hear us answer it in terms of, you know, what they'd like to hear, but we've responded in a responsible manner. They've been involved in town hall meetings. They've been involved in transition meetings, of which they're still continuing to be involved, which gives them a voice in terms of their concerns in the school environment. We will always request and invite their input in terms of their anxieties around, you know, the unknowns. I think part of the difficulty is no one has answers to all of these questions. A lot of times we're going to have to be actually have this children into schools before we can even respond to the questions that are out there because we've never dealt with it before. So to think that we can have answers to everything, we won't, and we don't. We've some of the questions that the teachers have at this point, to my understanding, is will there be protection equipment available? Yes, there will be. There's concerns around how they're feeling. Those are the anxieties and the unknowns that we're dealing with staff. And we have, and we are responsible for responding to those feelings and anxieties. We will take that into consideration in terms of, you know, the placements, staff, if they have any kind of concern around their, if they're at high risk, then they have that opportunity to talk to their doctor, and they can provide us with a doctor's note to that effect. There's anxiety for sure around, and the mental health issues are for sure concerning. We are trying our best to respond to those situations because the emotional wellness of our staff is a top priority in terms of our day-to-day activities. And we are doing, we have a wellness committee at each school so that we can address, you know, the mental health of our teachers. That's for sure a top priority for us. We are also concerned about their request for training around, you know, the safety protocols. We are working at, you know, putting in place training for the staff prior to the students coming back. That's ongoing. With the parent survey, we've always included our parents. Yes, there may be a lack of communication, as Michelle has stated. I know that our teachers are in touch with our parents on a daily basis, a weekly basis. to get their input and keep them up to date. We utilize Remind, which is a message from texting to our parents. For sure, those parents who don't want to be involved at this point have chosen not to be involved. And that's a really big portion of our student population. They have chosen, if they've chosen paper packages, then we understand that, you know, they don't have Wi-Fi at home. They're struggling with technology. That's the parent population right now that is of highest concern, at least at IL Thomas. We do have home and school meetings. We've been having, I think we've had 3 home and school meetings so far where we keep our parents up to date. We have our Facebook platform where we keep information communicated to the parents as well. There's a wellness agreement in place where when we do return to school, the parents will have to sign that agreement in order for the child to be at school, number one, but also there's protocol in place where if their child is sick, they are not to send their student to school. And if they are sent to school and they're ill, and we staff identify that, we have nurses on standby that are going to be into school all day long. You know, we've worked very diligently with house services, and we've brought the nurses on board at staff meetings, and I will continue to do that because for sure our teachers are as anxious as anybody else around, you know, what ifs. So having that firsthand opportunity to talk to their to a health professional is very, very important. So, you know, I understand that we are a vulnerable community. I'm hearing the counselors, you know, a lot of hesitation on the counselors' part of reopening. So going forward, I think the January dates are a little bit too close to opening. If we do open for February, that's cutting it too short. We only have actually 2 weeks of work once we return after Christmas for staff to compile and get this work done for January the 22nd. I think that's too short of a time frame to be ready to come back in February. You know, all of that taken into consideration just really leaves us in a vulnerable position. So I understand if the council decides that it's not a good idea and you're getting it from the community, you know, I totally respect your position in that regards. I'm just saying as an administrator, I feel that if 50% of the parent population wants their child back into school, I believe it's safe. We can always readdress it should situations change. But I also believe that, you know, parents do need that choice as well. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Bomberry. I do recognize the Councillor Wendy. Again, on the onset of the meeting, she did have another commitment that she was already over time, so she has withdrawn her name as the mover. That being said, then I will look to another mover, or even shifting up the seconder, looking for Councillor Helen.
Yeah, so the decision we're making today is, are we going to support the February 1st opening? Is that what we're making?
Yeah.
So I'll put that motion forward. I don't know how to word it, but
So there was, well, that was my point. There was a motion on the floor already that we would support it in the agreement of. So there were some conditions on that piece, which Councillor Audrey had seconded to and clarified those pieces. So again, that still supported the February 1st date with conditions of communication and
I'm
things
not
like that.
supporting that motion. I don't support that motion of the having the January 22nd in there. I'm supporting a motion of opening on February 1st. I don't know how to word it though.
Okay, that being said, then there's a motion that's been withdrawn from the mover. So that being said, I'm looking to the seconder,
Okay, I withdraw.
Counselor. Okay, thank you, Counselor Audrey. So that means now, Council, that there is no motion on the floor and looking to further next steps on this issue.
Putting a motion on the floor. I just don't know how to word it. That I'm putting a motion on the floor that council supports the February 1st opening of our schools. But I don't know what else to say. Somebody needs to help me on that.
I'm just wondering in a sense, because I know the dates seem to be an issue as well with Kathleen. Kathleen, is there any way that we could still do that update of numbers or results rather in regards to engagement on, like, say, a week prior? I'm not sure if Helen, if you still would support that, but that was basically to look to the updates of if anything fluctuates. So if the results fluctuated in a negative, then that would then look to reconsider the decision at that time. Or are you just looking to say to open the support to schools just as is?
I'm just looking to say to open on February 1st. I'm agreeing with Kathleen and Reva that we can't wait till January 22nd to say, oh, we're changing our mind. We can't do that. And I don't know, I don't see a survey in January make it any much different than the 2 surveys they've already had. And 50% of the people are saying they want their kids back in school. I don't particularly see that changing come January 22nd. I don't anyway. So I don't know what the intention was to have it. I'm not clear what, I guess I'm not clear what the concern is. Is it because we think people are going to change their mind in January? Is that what the thinking is? I'm not clear. I'm kind of confused here.
Helen, I think Wendy had a concern around, or Michelle, I'm not sure which one, had a concern around the the community not having enough information or answers to a lot of their concerns. So requesting more work being done on our part to identify those concerns and get that information out to them. I think that was the issue.
Well, I think we've already had, I think we've already had 2 surveys and we've gotten a very clear direction from those surveys. The last survey that just recently completed, 50% of the people are agreeable to send their kids to school. And that's what I'm basing my motion on for the start date of February 1st. We all know if something happens in January, that would change. But right now, based on the information that we have, I'm putting a motion to the floor to say that we agreed to starting school on February 1st.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. It's moved by Councillor Helen.
Who's around here that can help me write a resolution?
Is there a seconder to the motion? Second by Audrey. Question, or are you seconding?
I'll second it, but if I could add something to it. Is it possible to add to it and put the caveat in there? If the surrounding schools in Grand Erie element closed, then we would do the same.
Why would we do that?
Because if we're completely surrounded by cases of COVID in all the schools.
But if we don't have any, I don't know. This is
I think at that point, though, as mentioned already with Helen, we should look to. I mean, we've already seen. I don't know if we should necessarily base it on the surrounding schools, but more or less our cases in community. As we seen our last outbreak at the Thanksgiving weekend, we knew that, again, that outbreak was based upon gatherings, right, and things like that. So obviously, if there is an outbreak in January, then this decision would have to be reconsidered based upon which Helen already alluded to. So I would not base it on the other schools, but yet rather what the current situation is in community.
No, I agree, because like I said, if something happens in January, then naturally it's going to change. We're only making the decision now to say we're opening schools on February 1st. There's a lot of things could happen between now and February 1st. We could have a major outbreak in our community. We don't know, right? And then by then you look at the decision and it has to change. But right now, today, I'm saying we can support opening the school on February 1st.
Keeping in mind again that the parents have the
resolution. There has to be more to saying that council agrees to opening school on February 1st based on the information that we have today, or based on the what?
Okay, thanks, Helen. I do have a number of hands going up. I wanted to look to Councillor Audrey and then Councillor Michelle.
Yeah, I think we have to put the part in there that the emergency control group, public health, have to be included in the decision making of this, because they are the ones who are basically know all of the cases and all the rest of it. They're the ones who declare, and they give us our science and all the rest of it. So if we could word that in there, that would probably be good.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. All right, so with that being said, are you looking to still second the motion with those additions that you've just mentioned?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded with those additions. Going back to really quickly the mover, is that okay to include that in your motion, Helen?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I guess to me that's understood. If the emergency management groups is we can't open, then we can't open. But I don't know.
Okay, so it's agreed. It's been moved and seconded. And now questions, comments, Councillor Michelle?
And so I was just going to say in response to that, I think we've said, okay, at the end of the day, it's the parents who are going to decide if their children want to return or if their children are going to return. I guess for me, we do need to have that checkpoint or that check-in to ensure that everything is good to go. So even though we say February 1, as you alluded to, Chief Hill, it will be dependent on what's happening in our community, not what's happening around our community.
Sherry Lynn.
Thanks for your comments, Councillor Michelle. I'll shift now over to Councillor Sherry Lynn.
I just got a couple comments in the sense, again, if we're going to vote on this, council is also face-to-face on February 1st. Secondly, I'm getting numerous text messages and regarding Zoom, because people are watching this. And this is one here. I don't feel comfortable after seeing this, especially Kathleen dodging questions or giving vague answers. So again, as you can see, even by doing Zoom, the communication isn't going out, and people's the questions aren't getting answered to the fullest, I guess. And I just wanted to share this with you is because I think it's still a concern. So by even people by watching this are still not clear. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you, Sherry Lynn. Are there any further questions or comments from any councillors? I see Councillor Nathan.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. And I think too, just picking up on that last point of ongoing communication, I think for me, that's the fundamental piece between now and February 1st. And maybe that's where, and this goes back to the mover and seconder, maybe that's where we build that check-in in the motion that, you know, Kathleen continue to do, and the educators continue to do the work that they have to do between now and then. And I understand from your response, it's a lot of, working with the parents between now and then as well, to get that up to speed. What I think I'm hearing from some of the counselors is also that need for a check-in, not necessarily a decision point, but a check-in closer to that date, so that we can have that discussion around, here's the amount of communication we were able to do between now and the last time we met, based on the work. And for me, that's the important piece, so that, on the 22nd, we come back and we hear, some of these questions and this anxiety has been alleviated through, good information pieces between now and then. So that's something I'm hoping that the mover and seconder will build into that, is just to ensure that ongoing communication out, parents, teachers, educators, students, between now and then. And I don't think I'm asking anybody to do any extra work. This is work that you've already contemplated anyway, right? So maybe just, and it doesn't have to be a date in terms of like the 22nd. I don't think we put a hard date on that, but before we open, I think there should be one more check-in with, a session like this, to ensure that all of the concerns that are being raised now are addressed prior to opening. Because I think that's the crux, is we want to address all of the issues prior to opening. I think we're kind of missing that point. So I'm just going to bring that back in, to say, let's address the issues. Let's get people at a comfort level. And that's the process I think we should outline between now and then.
No, I agree.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan, for your comments. Just on those pieces really quickly, if I could shift to Kathleen. Kathleen, what would you suggest in a date to do that check-in back to the same format that we're having now?
I think that if we did a check-in, say on the 25th of January, it's a week before, but by that time, it gives the schools will have their information. The educator, everyone has their midwinter break, and the educators will be back January 25th. That gives a chance, like the custodial staff should be started by then. The PPE should be in by then, just to make sure that all of those checkpoints are in place. And I think hearing what Nathan had to say, and I think perhaps what we should do is, see, the schools have been making videos about doing virtual walkarounds right in their schools. Like what does it look like? How, what does it look like on the bus? What will it look like in the school? I believe that perhaps those things should be, and they've been doing them and posting them for parents, but I think they should probably all be shared with Candace and go out as part of Six Nations community information, as well as all the planning documents. I think that might really help. And, I think too, in situations like this, sometimes, I'm asked health questions that are completely health-based questions. And I'm an educator, as are all the colleagues on. We're educators. I was a principal for 10 years before coming into this role. We're educators. So some of the biggest concerns are around those health questions that the health professionals can answer very, very well. They've worked with us all the way through. They've put it all in writing in the plan. But also they will continue working, like the COVID nurses will be coordinated by a public health nurse as well. So that component of things can be answered much better than I could answer some of those questions on a health basis. And I think that's an important piece. So when we do the check-in in January, that some of the public health people are on the call as well, so that any of those type of questions can be answered more fully. I think that will help.
Okay, thanks, Kathleen. So you're suggesting to include that check-in date of January 25th?
That's what I'm hoping. I look at the parents, the parents who've made the decision and they want their child in school, they need some lead time. I mean, clearly, as Helen says, if the emergency control group says it's not safe at that point in time because of cases in the community, it's not safe. We don't open. That's absolutely crystal clear. But the parents need some time because they're going to need to know, okay, my child's in school, which days? How am I going to deal with the other days? Do I have to make work arrangements? What am I doing? All of these decisions impact people's lives. It's not just numbers of, statistics. It's all of those day-to-day considerations in making the decisions. And whichever way a family decides, that's what works for them. And then as a school system, we support that in whatever way we can, be it through the remote learning or through the face-to-face and how that all spills out, and to meet the needs of the children.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to shift back over to the mover and seconder. I do want to recognize as well, Councillor Audrey, question, comment?
Yeah, my question is, I agree with having a check-in date, which is good. Thank you for that, Kathleen and Nate. The other one, should we be including the word optional in there so that parents realize that they have a choice right off in the motion? So we're not alarming anybody to think they have to send their child back. It's a parent choice. They have a right to have their child home. They have a right to have their child educated in face-to-face. So we want to try and make as many people comfortable with their decision as possible. So
No, I agree.
Okay, so okay, thank you, Audrey and Nathan, for those suggestions. It's agreed upon by the mover and seconder to include those two pieces. First piece obviously being the check-in date of January 25th. Second piece, and inclusive to Audrey's latest comments in regards to keyword optional. And so that was agreed upon on the mover and seconder. Are there any further questions or comments?
I got something kind of written down here if you want to hear it.
Sure, go ahead, Helen.
That the Six Nations of the Grand River Elected Council approves the opening of the reserve schools on February 1st for parents who choose to send their children to school, with a January 25th update from ISC or from Kathleen to the elected update to council on January 25th from Kathleen. And I don't know, do we need
Okay,
something?
thank you.
We need
Okay, no, I think that covers.
We need a
It covers.
resolution.
Thanks, Helen. It covers majority of those points. Looking to the seconder, Audrey.
I thought we were including the part about the emergency control group in public health as well.
Well, to me, that's
Yeah,
given.
and
That's a given if the emergency
for us, but the parents might not think it's a given. They need to know that there are
Right.
the science and the health are helping to make this decision.
Well,
Not just
put the words in there then. I don't know how to
I
word it.
don't think there's no harm in including that within the motion.
Go
Are there
ahead.
any further questions or comments?
I have one comment, Mark, and that's in regards to the questions that come to counselors in terms of the, concerns around school opening. I would really appreciate it if you get concerns like that, direct them to the principals, because we have the information at our fingertip, that we're able to respond to their questions. We want to alleviate the fears and really respond to them appropriately. So, refer them to the administrators of all the schools.
Okay,
Good idea.
thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. Thank you. I appreciate that, Riva. Okay, Council, again, we've touched on all the points and it's inclusive within the motion. So I am going to look to any further questions or comments. Okay, seeing or hearing none, it's been moved and seconded, moved by Councillor Helen Miller, second by Councillor Audrey Paulus Bomberry. I will now go to a vote. All in favor?
Favor.
Favor.
Any opposed?
Yeah, I'm putting it out there on the basis that we got to fix the wording. That's all.
So I think we understand that piece. I'm still in the middle of the vote. I want to look to, are there any opposed to the motion? Okay, seeing or hearing none, motion's carried. Can I then get a motion to, actually, no, I don't even know if we have to waive second reading because we'll be coming back for an update on January 25th. But again, looking to a mover and seconder in the case that you choose to. I think at this point in time, there's really no need because of that check-in date.
Yeah.
Okay, so that being said, then Council, are there any further questions or comments for Kathleen or any of the educators on the line? I just have, I have one, it's a question that I received in regards to, as you know, Kathleen, we have some connectivity issues, internet issues in all those areas. And I was just wondering, I know we did have hotspots at our schools that parents and students, if they're having issues at their homes, that they could go and park in the parking lots of the schools. I believe Emily C. General was one, and Oliver M. Smith, I believe, was another, and I believe even Isle Thomas, but I was most recent in advised that Isle Thomas was no longer. Can you just clarify, is Isle Thomas still a hotspot school to use?
Yeah, actually all of the schools are. So the internet is available at all of the schools from the parking lot.
Thank you for that clarification. And just for the know, Councillor Hazel Johnson had just put in the chat that she is opposed to the motion for the records. She's having some technical difficulties. But I just wanted to clear that one point, and thank you for clarifying. So all schools are open in terms of the parking lots. In the case of issues at home that parents and students can go to. And again, this is just an interim solution. As you know and see, we are making some great strides within our broadband and connectivity issue. And so we will look to, again, next steps as we progress here. That being said as well, I just wanted to again commend all of the work of our educators. I know this has not been an easy decision, you know, as we move towards again such difficult times to maneuver through. Again, making it clear that this is going back to comments that I've made. This is an optional. We will have a check-in date of January 25th in the case that we see another outbreak within community. Again, as alluded by Councillor Miller, things could change from now until then and could further then now have to come back to the table and make further decisions at that time. But again, just want to be clear that it's the parents' option. They have the choice to send students back. And that, I think that's the most important piece to make sure that we're getting that out there. In the meantime, again, we still look to welcome the engagement piece of all of our families. Again, not an easy decision, and we are, again, doing our best as we can. So just thank you to all of the educators, as well as Kathleen and your team, and just continue to keep up the good work. So thank you for your time this morning. That concludes our meeting for this portion. Again, just want to thank you all and have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ona.